Y'all, what I'm about to show you is going to make your jaw drop. What would you do? And what would you respond in the comments if I told you there was $1 million given to one individual who runs a grocery store to feed 300,000 kids? The money was all pocketed. No money went to any kids' meals whatsoever. While at the same time, all of the money, the $1 billion, a lot of it, or some of it, allegedly went to terrorist groups called Al-Shabaab in Somalia. You know, the terrorist groups that are actively killing people. Yeah, this Minnesota taxpayer $1 billion defrauding under Tim Walz is about to become a very serious thing. I'm about to show you some stuff to make your jaw drop. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on. A big part of saving our country is exposing crap just like this. All right, let's get into it. You can follow me on X at Braden LOA. I am not going to bear the lead on you. This is really important. All right, so we covered this last night in our live stream, towards the tail end of the live stream. Minnesota social service workers slammed Governor Tim Walz as 100% responsible for the massive fraud of $1 billion in Minnesota. Now, if you're not familiar with this story yet, effectively it's this. In COVID, all of Minnesota's safety net was funded and then defrauded by people who were mostly tied to the Somali community, with some others who were tied to Tim Walz's campaign. It wasn't just Somalis. It wasn't just Tim Walz's campaign. It was the whole system. But now we're getting a little bit more information about where that money went. And wouldn't it make your heart just feel warm if you were a Minnesota taxpayer getting raked over the coals of the tax man to know that your dollars were going to pay for terrorist activities in Africa? Yeah. This is a can of worms. Okay, you see that little document right up here? The Minnesota Department of Human Services employees. I'm going to open that up right now. Here it goes. This is what it's alleging. And again, a lot of this is alleged at this point, but the DOJ is opening an investigation to if the money from Minnesota went to terrorist groups Al-Shabaab in Africa. Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud in Minnesota. We let Tim Walz know of fraud early on, hoping for a partnership in stopping fraud, but no, we got the opposite response. Tim Walz systemically retaliated against whistleblowers using monitoring, threats, repression, and did his best to discredit fraud reports. Instead of partnership, we got the full weight of retaliation by Tim Walz. Certain DFL, those are the Dem members, Democratic Farmers League, members, and an indifferent mainstream media. It's scary, isolating, and left us wondering who we can turn to. In addition to retaliating against whistleblowers, Tim Walz disempowered the Office of Legislative Auditor, allowing agencies to disregard their audit findings and guidance. Media and politicians supporting Tim Walz or the DFL agenda attacked whistleblowers who were trying to raise red flags on fraudulent activities. Y'all, this is not only fraudulent activities. There was not only the threat of accusations of racism if they didn't continue to go along with the shakedown in Minnesota. But now Tim Walz is tied to discrediting and underpowering the Office of Legislative Auditor. They covered this crap up? That was meant as a question. That's the allegations. I mean, my God, this is only getting worse and worse and worse. Let's continue on. This one is a report from Fox News. Again, you see this fancy schmancy media board? Tax dollars to terrorists from Minnesota to Somalia. Wow. Great job, everybody. This guy was almost the vice president of the United States. The Democrat standard bearer for vice president in the last election is tied to $1 billion fraud and covering it up because they didn't want to face the accusation of racism from those who were perpetrating the fraud. Oh, wow, you are a model in courage. All right, let's keep on going.
Terror group linked to Al-Qaeda. Justice Department says it will take a look. National correspondent Jeff Paul has details.
They're calling for an investigation. 4 Minnesota Congress members addressing the state's U.S. attorney, demanding answers after a report claimed taxpayer dollars were ending up in the hands of Somali terror group Al-Shabaab.
If you're paying taxes for services you expect and things you expect your state government to provide, those taxes should not be going to a terrorist group in a foreign country.
House Majority Whip Tom Emmer is referencing this article written by urban policy magazine City Journal which is published by a conservative think tank, the Manhattan Institute. Citing unnamed sources, the report alleges funding that was supposed to go to state programs to help with housing and feeding people was being stolen. Without specifying an amount, the article claims some of that money was then sent to Somalia through a complex network where it eventually ends up aiding the al-Qaeda-linked terror group.
This is a...
Okay, and I want to be really clear and re-emphasize my entire framing of this video. This is all alleged. This has not been proven in court. The DOJ is looking into it. There's been plenty of leaks. There's been lots of other people who are stepping up and saying things, and Tim Walz has even admitted that it's happening on CBS with Kristen Welker. So it's not like there's nothing here. The big thing in question was it's not the $1 billion that was stolen from Minnesota taxpayers because the Dems were afraid of being called racist by the perpetrator of the fraud. It's the issue is, where did that money go? And some of it looks like it ended up in Al-Shabaab through multiple different distribution networks. So if you're in Minnesota, there's a chance and an open investigation amidst allegations that your tax dollars, where again you were raked over the coals, went to a foreign terrorist group. Now this is the really ironic part because Minnesota is extremely blue. Extremely blue, Democrats and liberals have very, very tight emotional strings. Everything's a litmus test. Everything is an emotional value test. Everything is ethics and morals. Everything is the emotional high ground. How does this make you feel in Minnesota with the emotional high ground of knowing that your money potentially, through a well-known and proven fraud scheme, could have ended up in a terrorist group that is actively killing people who disagree with their religious ideology because their ideology is linked to ISIS. Yeah, this is where you tone down the emotion a little bit and you turn up the brain power just a little bit. There is a balance. Both are very essential. Emotion is key and a part of being a human. Brain power is also key and part of being a human. When you let one, like emotion, override brain power, you're gonna get bent over a barrel. Okay, let's continue. Maybe there's more, because there is. All right, watch.
Huge black eye to the nonprofit community. There was lack of oversight. There's criminal intent.
Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar spoke at the state's capitol yesterday with other state leaders.
I can't. Honestly, she doesn't add anything of value to this. I don't like listening to her talk a lot of the time. But genuinely, here you go. Y'all, it damages the NGO network. That's the non-governmental organization network. By the way, if you are part of my 2A contingent, if you have been with me for 4 and 5 years, you guys know that the left, through the Biden administration and all the Democrats and the gun control orgs, were pushing non-governmental organizations to the tune of $5 billion in the Biden budget, which then got removed and destroyed. But genuinely, the exact same NGOs were pushed on us from the national level. Watch this. This is where, again, this is just the allegations. I told you that already. This is where the tie-in comes in to Tim Walz. Watch this.
Now to what's being called devastating news. That's the reaction just in to crimes a former Minneapolis chamber leader is accused of.
Jonathan Weinhagen is facing federal fraud charges tonight.
Callan Gray has been digging into the accusations. She's live in Minneapolis right now with what she's found.
Tonight, there are new calls for accountability from those personally affected by the crimes he's accused of. One grandfather of a shooting victim calling it unbelievable.
The indictment says from December 2019 through June 2024, former Minneapolis Regional Chamber of Commerce president and CEO Jonathan Weinhagen embezzled, quote, hundreds of thousands of dollars from the chamber and its business members. It says he entered into sham contracts with a fake consulting company he created and used an alias, James Sullivan, and at one point opened a line of credit in the Chamber of Commerce's name, used it for personal expenses, and diverted donations from chamber business members to repay the money. But for some in Minneapolis, the most upsetting charge is for mail fraud. It says the Chamber of Commerce gave $30,000 to Crime Stoppers to fund rewards for information leading to an arrest in 3 shootings in May 2021 that killed 2 children and severely injured a third. A year later, it says Weinhagen requested Crime Stoppers return the money, and when he got the check, he, quote, stole the money and used it to pay for his personal expenses.
Wow. I mean, shitbag for 500, Alex. Here's the big thing, and this is what you have to understand. You're looking at systemic fraud brought about by an overweight, bloated bureaucracy that is controlled by powerful interests tied directly to the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, the guy who was going to be the VP if Kamala Harris had won. You cannot make this stuff up. And now to the NGO part about the whole Crime Stoppers thing. Crime Stoppers is one of those organizations that the left uses to do their non-police violence intervention or interruption networks. Okay? They put a lot of money forward to find the criminals. They put a lot of money forward to fund the people who would do the day-to-day on the streets intervention. Yeah, the money was stolen by the guy from the Chamber of Commerce and he pocketed himself. This is why you don't do this, because a corrupt official can come along and without accountability and oversight, just pocket all the money. Again, emotion and brain power are equal members of the party. If you have one over the other, it's not going to be good. We're humans. We're not robots, but we're also not emotional squirrels. There is a difference. So that's where we're at this morning. Last night it broke. This morning the can of worms is everywhere. And I can't wait for later on today when I'm sure the entire world's going to be on fire, because this is a dumpster fire of epic proportions. And I cannot wait to hear what you guys think in the comments below. I'm Braden. See you later.